What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin, and today we'll be talking about the box office for this weekend of April 5th to April 7th, and to no one's surprise, Shazam is indeed the #1 film, but what is interesting to me is the fact that coming in at number 5, that's right, number 5 this week is Captain Marvel. Interesting, very interesting indeed. Now, let's just be honest here. It's made $1 billion. It's made a crap ton of money. No one's denying it at this point. However, will it indeed be able to make as much money as it probably should have made had there not been some competition? Probably not. It'll probably end up crapping out around 1.2, 1.3 billion max, I would say. But it is still doing well nonetheless. But Shazam, this is all about Shazam this week. Came in at $53.4 million for the weekend with a total gross of around $56.7 million domestically if you take into account the early showings that just came in, which is a very, very good showing nonetheless. Pet Sematary also had a very strong showing as well, making about $25 million. So for a $21 million budget and a horror film nonetheless, that is indeed a very, very good sign. Dumbo dropped to number 3, which is actually not nearly as bad as one might think, though it is indeed a 60% drop from week 1 to week 2, which is not good, meaning that Dumbo likely is going to end up losing money at the box office because of that, because guess what? It just gets worse. You got Hellboy coming out this weekend, and then not long after, boom, you get yourself Endgame, and Endgame is going to eat up the entire market. Us is still making money, so here Us made $13.8 million, Captain Marvel made another $12.6 million, and Best of Enemies came out this week. Never really saw any trailers for it, have no desire to see it, $4.5 million. And of course, too, you have a bunch of other films that have come out this week that no one is seeing because they're indie films and such. So, Shazam, how much has it made? It has made $158.7 million, meaning this film is very much on the way to not only breaking even, but also making profit as well. Is it the biggest launch of all time? No. Is it doing extremely well in other areas like China, for example? Not really, but it's still going to make enough domestically and in the foreign market to be able to justify its own existence and also easily justify a sequel. Would not be surprised if by next weekend you have this film around the $250 million mark or so, and if that's the case, then at that point it would be pretty much broken even, making profit, and anything else it makes after that point would indeed be profit, and this film is definitely going to merit a sequel. It's a great film. I got to see it, gave it a B+, solid DC film, probably my favorite DCU film thus far, and that's even over Aquaman. Aquaman's a lot of fun, but this one to me is just a better film. This is a better film than Aquaman, this is a better film than Wonder Woman, and any other DCEU film. In fact, those are the only 3 that I really consider to be any quality films. And I know that I'm gonna get a lot of hate from all the Zack Snyder fanboys out there, but guys, I'm sorry, the movies that he made just were not that great. Sorry, they just weren't that great, but I digress. Shazam, excellent film, definitely worth seeing in theaters. Go watch it if you can. Give it some support, give it some money, give Warner Brothers some moolah, so that way maybe finally they'll start to get, their act together and maybe finally start to get some semblance of a extended universe, or at least make clear this is what they're doing, whether or not they're going to make it individual universes within each world and then sometimes randomly have crossovers, or whether or not they're actually building up to a Justice League 2. We don't know, because everything has been very kind of smoke and mirrors and very questionable at the, at best. So still, again, strong opening nonetheless, $158.7 million, doing very well for the real Captain Marvel. Pet Sematary also had a very strong opening, at least domestically, with a worldwide total of around $42.3 million, meaning, again, this film is well on its way to breaking even, well on its way to making profit. And for a reboot, I've heard some pretty good things about it from audiences and critics alike. However, I do not like scary movies, so I will likely not be seeing this at any point, but who knows? You never know what can happen. But yeah, this is indeed a horror genre film, and for $42.3 million, that's pretty damn good. Also keep in mind that the foreign market's going to be low because foreign markets don't really tend to support horror films all that much. Not to mention, China is not going to get a release of this film because, at least I don't believe it is, because China has some very strict rules with how many movies from the United States it allows in, how many Western films it allows in a given year, and almost always the horror films are the ones that are left out because they do have a secular government, and so anything that seems to indicate spirits or anything that seems to indicate any type of supernatural stuff, they actually try and keep out of their country, which is an interesting fact, but that's also the reason why those films tend not to do very well in the foreign market, because of the fact that it's not released in China, and China is, of course, a gigantic market, as we've seen just whenever I covered other films in the past. So $42.3 million, pretty solid opening for Pet Sematary. Dumbo! Oh, Dumbo. $213 million, and it's only going to get worse from here. Again, a 60% drop domestically from week 1 to week 2. Not making much in the foreign market. Again, 2 weeks now. It's only made about 137 million. Compare that to Shazam, which has made 102 million in just the first weekend, which is definitely going to outpace Dumbo very, very quickly. Dumbo did indeed beat out Captain Marvel this week, which I found to be kind of interesting. But with all that being said, this is a film that is likely, in all likelihood, going to end up in the bust category. Why do I say that? Well, the production budget was $170 million, which is a crap ton of money. It's around the same amount of money that it cost to make Elita Battle Angel. Elita Battle Angel technically did not break even because it needed to make around $430 million in order to break even. This is a film that's only made about $213 million at this point. It's in the second weekend. Assuming this is around 60% of its entire take, then it seems to indicate that this film might not even make it to $400 million. And if that's the case, it is indeed a flop. And this is not a good thing for Disney, especially if they're wanting the live action remakes to be their thing and their way of making easy and quick money. This is a loss. This is going to be written off as a loss. Now, some people are going to say, oh, well, DVD, Blu-ray sales will probably make it up because there will be some families that will buy it. And that is, in all likelihood going to be true. But this is definitely not what they wanted. They wanted these types of films to do very well. They wanted these films to be easy cash grabs, but it looks like audiences aren't really buying into it. So now let's hope that if anyone did not see this, don't go see Aladdin. For the hell, for every other reason under the sun, do not go see The Lion King when it comes out this summer. Let Disney know we do not want all of this regurgitated garbage, and we want them to make original content again, and good content at that. I'm not trying to say Dumbo is bad. I'm not trying to say that the movie should just be totally written off because it's, devoid of any creative genius whatsoever. What I'm trying to merely point out is that when you look at these types of films, and you look at what Disney's doing, I'm sick and tired of it. Seriously. Like, there are some live action remakes they've made, like Cinderella, that was good, but I can still step back from that film and say, okay, this was not a film that needed to be made. Dumbo, I think, is the same way, and many other films, too. I know that many people, for example, Jeremy, is a huge supporter of Pete's Dragon. I never actually got to see the live action Pete's Dragon. I myself personally like Jungle Book a lot, but again, I would rather not have them and keep the originals or have a re-release of the originals in theaters than for them to just put millions, $170 million into a project that no one's asked for and that really no one wants to see. I don't care how far along CGI has come. If you're going to make a CGI character and it's going to essentially be an animated character and you already have a classic animated character, there's no need for it. Lion King especially, since it's all animated, it's all CGI, there's literally no reason for that film to exist. But anyway, Dumbo likely going to go into the flop category this year. Us doing very, very well. $216.5 million. Of course, that domestic market's going to be gigantic for it because of just the cultural differences between the United States and also other countries, so it's going to do very well. This film is crazy profitable. It only costs around $20 million to make, meaning that the overall cost of the film was around $30 million. When you add in marketing and things of that sort, and seeing that it gets 60% of that $216 million, that's a pretty good chunk of change. So that's about, 70 plus million. Probably by the end of its run, it's going to be well over $100 million in profits alone, net profits, net gains, which is just insane to me. It's a film that I still kind of want to see because it looks interesting, and I think Jordan Peele has kind of, sold it as being not a, us versus them, but literally focusing on the us factor. you see the word us in there, and it seems to indicate that as much, so something that I'd be interested in seeing at some point in time, but doing very well domestically. Captain Marvel, oh boy. So this film is indeed over the $1 billion mark. Everyone's talking about this weekend saying, oh my gosh, $1 billion, this is so great. And I've already pointed out that there are other films like Alice in Wonderland, for example, that made $1 billion. There are other films, for example, like Jurassic World 2, which many people would consider those films not to be the best films in the world, and yet those broke $1 billion, and yet you hear people saying, oh, it made $1 billion, so therefore everyone loves it. No, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Just because a movie makes money, just because a movie is profitable, does not mean that people necessarily like the film. Notice that there are some of the greatest films of all time that have come out that are beloved that did not do well at the box office. Just in the past, 5 years, actually 5 to 7 years, go ahead and look to Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow did terrible at the box office, but is considered one of the greatest sci-fi films, one of the greatest recent sci-fi films. That movie lost money. It's getting a sequel. Blade Runner 2049. No one saw that movie, and it's a freaking masterpiece. And most people who saw it loved it. However, didn't make money. Does not mean it's a bad movie. Again, box office does not equate good or bad. The movie equates good or bad. And from an objective standpoint, Captain Marvel, whether you bots like it or not, it's a bad movie. I'm sorry, spoiler, it's a bad movie. It's not well written. It's not, it's decently acted, because if you have to throw in, Samuel L. Jackson just to save a movie, I mean, he's great and everything, but when everyone else is kind of just bringing it down with either bland or in some cases just, cringeworthy performances and terrible direction. I mean, the direction and the writing for this film is the worst part of it. Worse even than Brie Larson, I would say, because those are the things that drive the film. But even then, with all that being said, Captain Marvel is indeed profitable. It's making money. It's indeed going to end up making around 1.2, I would say, by the end of its run. 1.2, probably, crap out around $1.2 billion. Originally, I thought it was going to be a little bit higher, but as you see, now that it's beginning to have competition, it's not holding up. People would much rather go see Shazam than go see Captain Marvel. Most people would rather go see Pet Sematary than go see Captain Marvel because those are films that actually pique their interest. While Captain Marvel, it did great opening weekend. Good job, guys. You were able to get, a crap ton of money. Keep in mind that within the first 3 weeks, it made over $900 million. And ever since then, it's just not really made up that much money. So again, it's not going to have it's not going to have a lot of leg. So it's really not going to make too much more than this going forward, but still, again, billion-dollar film, can't ignore it. Unplanned, the film that every liberal hates because it tells a story about a pro-life individual, or rather someone who was pro-choice who becomes a pro-life individual. And I know this is not everyone's cup of tea, which is why I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but still, $12.4 million, not bad. Doing pretty well for, a pure flicks film, which are not the best films in the world, but I do love how almost every critic in their so-called objective opinion makes it a commentary on the subject matter rather than the actual movie itself. For those critics that actually go after the movie itself from an objective standpoint, good on you. Again, go ahead and keep that going on. But keep in mind that don't go ahead and then defend films that go from the opposite standpoint just because you agree with their position. Or don't defend other films that are objectively bad just because, you want to support the overall message of a given film. That's kind of the biggest danger, and that's the reason why I'm trying to create my own website. I'm trying to create a new standard, basically, for an objective side, an objective standpoint when it comes to films, so that way we can still have the subjective view, but also have an objective standard as well. And that's why I'm working on that over at OMB Reviews. And lastly, of course, Elita Battle Angel. And I'm just going to refresh it one more time because it looks like they haven't updated it, because you remember how it was at $402 million last weekend. Then they had a midweek adjustment just like last week. Now it's at $401.7 million. It's kind of weird to me that there hasn't really been an update at this point. This claims obviously that it's it's kept up to date at least when it comes to the domestic market, and I believe that as much because it only made about a little over $100,000 or so this weekend in the domestic market. But I don't think this has included any of the foreign totals yet, because it just doesn't make any sense to me that this number would have been readjusted down and has not seen any real increase since then. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So again, domestically that makes sense. Foreign market, not so much, because from what I know, it's still active in China. It's still, I think, even got an IMAX release in China. I know that they worked out some kind of deal. So it is interesting to me that this is indeed the case for the film going forward, but we shall indeed see how this film ends up by the end of its run. But anyway, guys, what are y'all's thoughts on this? Have y'all seen any of these films? What are y'all's thoughts? Do you think that, Shazam is going to end up being a, big film? I think that, within the realm possibility, if this film ends up around $300 million by next weekend, which again is a pretty tall order, especially since Hellboy is coming out, and Hellboy is, whether we like it or not, is indeed going to provide some box office competition. The question is going to be, how much longer can Shazam continue to make money? Is it going to be able to survive? This is a film that if it makes $400 million, then boom, it's profitable. It's made money, because this was only about $100 million. And I think that when you take in tax credits into account, it's only about $90 million, meaning that the film costs, less than $150 to make, meaning that it needs to only make around $300 million or so to break even, which it's definitely going to be able to do by the end of its run. The question is, how profitable will it be? And also, when will we get a Shazam 2? Because Shazam 1 was great. It's fantastic. Probably the best DCEU film yet at this point, and it's fantastic. A hell of a lot better than this crappy film. But as you can see from right here, from an objective standpoint, even crappy films can make $1 billion when the better films end up not doing nearly as well. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, smash that like button, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe. You are all amazing people. Go check me out over on the Odin's Movie Blog channel. Things have been kind of crazy going on with YouTube's algorithms and everything like that. Everything's been going nuts. So if you have not subscribed to that channel and you like box office reviews, if you like me talking about the culture and things like that, go check that out, because it would help me out a lot. Seriously, because YouTube sucks. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.